Welcome to the GDS Lab version 2024 5.5, how to set up a custom test using user-defined control scripts. So first of all, you should have a test currently loaded in, or you would have created a new test. Now, I'm going to create a new one, just add in something here. And yeah, we're going to click the sample as docked and move to this screen, which this is the screen of interest. Now, here we have the test module, and if we scroll down, we have a look at our options. We can have all the different types of test modules, and the one we're looking at is user defined. So if we click this, it gives us a section with a set and an if, and we have some buttons here as well. For example, if we look at monotonic loading, we have some sets and stuff here. So we've got a set with cell pressure and axial velocity, and these are the only two things we can control in this monotonic loading test module. But for example, if we go to user defined, we can actually choose anything we want out of these calculated and read parameters, and we can set the targets, we can set the mode, and we can have termination conditions, which is what the if statement is for. So for example, I'm going to select axial displacement, and I will want it to ramp to 2, and I want it to get there in 5 minutes, and that can be my first set. Then if I add another set in this section, for example, I could add cell pressure, and I could want that to have a target of 300 in 2 minutes. If it to ramp, there you go. And that could be my next set, and then I could add yet another set. And I could want to control back volume, and I want it to ramp to 1000 in 2 minutes. So those are my control conditions that I'm setting up at the moment, but I can add, as I mentioned earlier, termination conditions. If I add 2, the first one can be actual load. If that is greater than 4, I can select one of these things here. And the options I've got at the moment is if it gets to 4, I can end the stage, go to the next stage, go to the next section, or just go to section 1. Now, if I add more sections, it will then give me the option to go to a different section. So for example, say if the actual load got to 4, and then I had something here, that because it went to 4, I then didn't want it to activate, I could then skip section and go to section 3. So in that case, section 2 would be skipped, and then we'd end up at section 3. And you have complete customization on this. So my second if on the first section would be if cell volume is greater than 5000, go to section 3. So again, this would skip the section. Now on this one, I'm just going to say go to section 2. I could also add a timer if I wanted to. Say for example, if it gets to section 2, I can click to this one, and this is highlighted section 2 now. You see this little grey border around section 2. If I click to section 1, it highlights this, and this is how you add the sets and ifs. So I'm going to select section 2, and I can add an if here, and you've got another if, for example, or I could add another set in section 2. And you can also press these little X's to get rid of them. For example, I could then put the axial displacement again at a target at 4, and I want it to ramp, and I want it to take 2 minutes. And then I can put if time since start of stage is greater than 5 minutes, go to next section, and then it would jump to this section. So that is a termination condition. That means that once it goes to 5 minutes, it will then go to the next stage. Then for section 3, I can have actual load, and I can have it to say use initial value. So whatever the value is, where it gets to section 3, it will then keep it at this value, and I'm going to set the mode to constant as well. And then I can leave so that there's no if section, or for example, I could select if, and I could do time since start of stage again. If I find it, I could say 6 minutes, for example, and I could do end stage, and that would end the test. So all you have to do, once you're happy with all of your sections and the way that you've customized it, you can click apply, and then what happens, it pops up into your stage test list over here. And you can also rename it if you want. to something else, you can click apply, then it will still rename it as well. But anyway, that is in the test list. Then to start it, all you need to do is go to the test and press start test. In my case though, I'm going to add a few more things on the graph so it's easier to read, so it reflects what I've put in to my custom defined script. I'm going to add back pressure to this graph here. And then my local radial, I will change to cell volume. Then I'll also add a back volume. Now I'm going to start the test. So here's a thing to know while the test is running. Now I have paused this a couple of times because I've done things off of the recording, but while the test is running, you aren't able to edit any of these sections here, but you are able to edit the if statements that you've got in these sections. So for example, at the moment, test we see running, and if we look at this, the actual load is at 0.25 at the moment, and it's gradually climbing. So if I wanted to change this, I could actually say, if it's greater than 0.25, then it can go to section 2. And if I click apply, it will then move to section 2. And you can see this is ramping up quite. That's the change. That's when I've pressed the change. So you can edit these termination conditions as you go. But anyway, that is how to set up a custom test using user-defined control scripts. Thank you.